I never thought I'd live out my old age like this. I'm sure my Howard didn't expect it either when we picked out this house together on a quiet Magnolia Street in Sugarland almost 40 years ago. We were so happy then. A young family with a 5-year-old son, full of hopes and plans. Now all that's left of those times are memories and photos in old albums that I occasionally pull out of my dresser drawer. Howard passed away 6 years ago. A heart attack took him suddenly without warning. Our son Weston is long grown, married Laura, and gave us 2 grandchildren, Morton and Pearl. I was 68, and I thought I would live out my life in peace and dignity in my own home. But fate took a different course. 3 years ago, Weston called me with an unexpected request. Mom, we're having some financial difficulties. You know how hard it is to get a mortgage these days. Laura and I were thinking, maybe we could stay with you for a while, a year, tops, until we could save up for a down payment on our own house. Of course I said yes. What kind of mother says no to her child, even an adult? Besides, I was lonely in the big house after Howard died. I thought spending time with my grandchildren would fill my days with joy. Weston, Laura, and the kids moved in a week later. Things were good at first. Laura cooked dinners, the children delighted me with their school stories. Morton was 13 at the time and Pearl was 9. Such smart, beautiful grandchildren. My pride. I noticed the first changes after about 6 months, little things that gradually accumulated. Laura started rearranging furniture without my permission, removed my pictures of me and Howard from the mantel, replacing them with her own family snapshots. When I gently expressed my displeasure, she shrugged. Agatha, we need to make ourselves at home here too. Besides, these old frames don't fit in at all with the modern decor. Then she started throwing away my things. One day, I couldn't find my favorite ceramic vase that Howard and I brought back from our 20th wedding anniversary trip to Italy. Oh, the blue one? Laura said nonchalantly when I asked her. It accidentally broke while I was cleaning, but it was so old, wasn't it? I didn't say anything, though my heart ached. It wasn't just a vase, but a memory of happy days with my husband. Gradually, I began to notice that there was less and less room for me in my own home. My bedroom was temporarily given to Morton because a growing boy needs his own space. I was moved into a small guest room overlooking the neighbor's garage. My books from my study moved to boxes in the basement because Weston needs a home office. My son spoke to me less and less often. He would come home from work tired, eat dinner in silence, and retire to the study or the TV. If I tried to talk to him about what was bothering me, he would wave me off. Mom, let's not talk about it now. I'm tired. And a year quietly turned into 2, then 3. Weston and Laura never mentioned buying their own house again. But more and more often their conversations slipped into phrases about how they planned to make repairs when the house was ours. It was like I was a temporary guest in my own home. Laura began to blatantly ignore me, talking about me in the third person in my presence. Agatha left her pills on the kitchen table again. Agatha turned the TV up too loud again. My grandchildren have changed too. Morton, now a teenager, spent all his time in his room, my former bedroom, playing computer games. Pearl, looking at her mother, began to copy her attitude toward me. Grandma, are you wearing that old robe again? It's so ugly. Yesterday came the turning point. I was in the kitchen making my signature blueberry pie, the same one Weston loved so much as a child. I wanted to make my family happy, to create some semblance of the comfort and warmth that had been missing lately. Laura entered the kitchen and immediately cringed. What was that smell? Agatha, really? Blueberry pie? You know Pearl has a gluten intolerance, and Morton's watching his figure. He's on the varsity basketball team. Weston's on a diet. I don't need that kind of calorie intake. But Pearl ate my pie last Thanksgiving and it was fine, I argued quietly. That was before we discovered her intolerance. Laura cut her off. Seriously, Agatha, do you have no regard for the health of your own grandchildren? Weston walked in at that moment. He sniffed, and for a second there was a twinkle in his eye, the little boy who loved his mother's pies. But a glance from Laura quickly brought him back to reality. Mom, Laura's right. We told you about Pearl's diet. Why don't you ever listen? I just wanted to do something nice for the family, I started. But Laura interrupted me. You know what? This whole thing, she put her hand around the kitchen. This is the problem. You keep acting like this is still your house. where you can do whatever you want. This is my home, I said quietly, feeling the tears boiling over. Mom, Weston rubbed the bridge of his nose. Technically, yes, but we've lived here for 3 years. We're a family. We have to consider each other's needs. Does anyone consider my needs? I asked, surprised at my own audacity. I've been evicted from my bedroom. My pictures have been removed. My things have been thrown out. Oh, here we go. Laura rolled her eyes. Weston, I can't hear it anymore. It's the same thing every time. Poor me, poor me. Maybe it's time for your mom to consider a nursing home. She'd be better off there. Laura, Weston urged her, but not with any confidence. What? I'm telling the truth. She's 68. She's always forgetting things, leaving the stove on. I've never left the stove on, I countered. There, see? She doesn't even remember that, Laura exclaimed triumphantly. Weston, I came home twice last month and found the burner on. That was a lie. I've always been careful with the stove ever since I was a school cook. But I could see in my son's eyes that he believed his wife, not me. Mom, maybe Laura's right. Maybe we should think about a special institution where you'll be taken care of. Something inside me broke. 3 years of humiliation, of being gradually pushed out of my own home. And now this. Weston, I said, trying to keep my voice from shaking. I'm not going to any nursing home. This is my home. I live here. You're the ones who came here temporarily, remember? But Mom, no buts. I'm tired of the way you all treat me. I'm not some burden. I'm your mother. And this is my home. Laura slammed her palm on the table. That's it. So we're uninvited guests to you? After all we've done for you? Who cooked your meals? Who did your laundry? Who took you to the doctor? I didn't ask for that, I said quietly. And I can take care of myself. Oh, really? Laura grinned. Weston, can you hear your mother? After everything we've done. Weston stood there looking from me to his wife. I could see two feelings struggling in him, his duty as a son and his fear of Laura's anger. And I already knew which would win. Mom, you don't understand how this sounds, he began. We're a family. We're supposed to support each other, and you're acting like this is my house? I finished for him. But it is, Weston. Your father and I bought it. Paid the mortgage for 30 years. Every nail, every board in here. It's me and Howard's house. It was yours, Laura interjected. And now it's our house. Deal with it, Agatha. I looked at my son, expecting him to object, but he didn't say a word. Weston, I called out. Is that what you think too? He wouldn't look me in the eye. Mom, you're making this harder than it has to be. We all just need to calm down and, I said. No, Laura interrupted him. That's enough. I can't take it anymore. Agatha, either you accept the fact that this is our home now and live by our rules, or what? I asked, feeling strangely calm. Either pack your things and leave, Laura blurted out. Laura, Weston exclaimed, but not convincingly. What? You said yourself that you were tired of her constant complaints. All that talk about my house. Her constant complaining. My son was silent, and that silence spoke louder than any words. Okay, I said quietly. You're kicking me out of my own house, Weston? No one's kicking you out, Mom. He finally looked at me. It's just, maybe you should really stay with your friend Yvette for a while. Just until things settle down. You said yourself she invited you to stay. Weston Frederick Harrington, I said his full name, like I did when he was little and pranked. Are you really asking me to leave the house I bought with your father? The house where you grew up? Something flashed in his eyes. Shame, regret. But Laura put her hand on his shoulder and that moment of vulnerability vanished. Mom, no one says forever. It's just temporary. Until we all calm down. I looked at my son and I didn't recognize him. Where was the little boy I taught to be honest and brave? Where was the teenager who once got into a fight at school, defending his mother's honor? There was a stranger standing in front of me. Okay, I said, surprised at my own calm. I'll leave. Right now. Mom, don't be so dramatic, Weston laughed nervously. It's almost nighttime. You can pack in the morning. No, I cut him off. I'm leaving now, since I'm no longer welcome in my own home. I left the kitchen and went upstairs to my small room. My hands were shaking, but I methodically gathered the essentials, clothes, medicine, the photo albums I'd saved from Laura. And of course, all the important documents, the title deeds to the house, the bank papers, the insurance papers. I always kept them in a locked box under my bed. When I came downstairs with the two suitcases, Weston was standing in the hallway, alone without Laura. Mom, you can't leave like this. I can, I replied, and I'm going. But where are you going? To Yvette's. You suggested it. I'll call her. He reached for the phone. Don't do that. I called her while I was getting ready. She's waiting for me. That was a lie. I hadn't called Yvette, but I didn't want Weston to feel better about taking care of me. Mom, let's talk about this in the morning, when everyone has calmed down. He took a step toward me. There's nothing to discuss, Weston. You've made your choice. Laura entered the hallway at that moment. Her face lit up with a triumphant smile when she saw my suitcases. So you're really leaving? She asked with ill-concealed satisfaction. Yes, Laura. Just like you wanted. At last, she exclaimed with undisguised joy. At last the house would be mine alone. Weston gave her a warning glance, but it was too late. Laura, not now, he hissed. Why? She waved her hands in the air. I'm telling the truth. Now we can do a proper renovation here without all this old wallpaper and horrible furniture from the last century. I looked at her and felt a strange feeling, a mixture of pain, disappointment, and relief. Relief. It was as if the mask had finally fallen and everything was clear. Goodbye, Weston, I said, picking up the suitcases. Take care of the kids. Mom, wait. He took another step toward me, but I was already opening the door. Agatha, don't forget to leave your keys, Laura shouted after me. We'll have to change the locks, but still. I didn't answer. I silently walked out onto the porch and closed the door behind me. The warm summer evening enveloped me, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe freely. I walked down the steps and down the driveway without looking back. 40 years of memories were behind me, but with me were my papers, my pride, and a strange, unexpected sense of freedom. Yvette Parrish's house was only 10 blocks from mine, but that night the journey seemed endless. I wandered the quiet streets of Sugarland, rolling two suitcases behind me, and tried to comprehend what had happened. My own son had kicked me out of my house, the home I'd paid off with his father for years, where every corner held the memories of our family. It was almost 10 p.m. when I rang Yvette's doorbell. We'd been friends for over 30 years, ever since we'd worked together in the school cafeteria. She had been widowed before me, almost 10 years ago, and now lived alone in a small but cozy house with a tile roof and a garden full of roses. Agatha? Yvette opened the door and stared at my suitcases in bewilderment. What's wrong? I'm sorry I'm late, I said, my voice trembling. I need a place to sleep. Can I stay at your place? Yvette opened the door wider without asking questions and helped me drag my suitcases into the hallway. Only when we were sitting in the kitchen with cups of hot tea did she ask, Tell me, what happened? And I did. About everything, the 3 years of gradual displacement from my own home, about today's quarrel, about Laura's words, about Weston's silent betrayal. Yvette listened without interrupting, only occasionally shaking her head or pressing her lips together. I've always said that Laura is a real snake, she said when I was done. But Weston, I didn't expect him to be like that. I remember what a good boy he was. I didn't expect it either, I replied quietly, staring into my cup. You can stay here as long as you need to. Yvette covered my hand with hers. I have plenty of room. Thank you, I nodded gratefully. But I don't want to be a burden. Don't even start, she interrupted me. You'll never be a burden. Remember when I stayed with you for 2 weeks when my pipe burst? That's what friends are for. I didn't get much sleep that night. I lay in Yvette's guest room, staring at the ceiling and thinking about my life. About Howard. About how we'd built our house together. About Weston, whom I no longer seemed to know. About my grandchildren, whom I might never see again. And gradually, amidst these bitter thoughts, a new one began to form. Strange, defiant, almost frightening. In the morning, I went down to the kitchen where Yvette was already preparing breakfast. Scrambled eggs with bacon, toast, freshly brewed coffee. The smells were so homely, cozy. How did you sleep? She asked, though I could tell from the circles under my eyes. Not so good, I admitted honestly, but I'd thought about a lot of things. Like what? I took a deep breath, gathering my thoughts. I've decided to sell the house. Yvette almost dropped her spatula. What? I'm going to sell the house, I repeated, and the words gave me a strange feeling inside, a mixture of fear and determination. It's all mine. I have all the deeds. I'll sell it and buy something smaller, just for me. Yvette slowly lowered herself into the chair across from me. Are you sure it's a drastic step? I'm absolutely sure, I nodded. Weston and Laura think they can just kick me out and take over my house? Well, I have a surprise for them. A slow, approving smile appeared on Yvette's face. You know what? I like this new fighting attitude. It's exactly what you need. After breakfast, I called Dorothy Ashford, the daughter of an old acquaintance of ours who worked as a realtor at a local real estate agency. We arranged to meet at her office in 2 hours. The Ashford and Associates office was located in a modern glass and concrete building in the downtown area. Dorothy, an elegant woman of about 45, met me in a conference room overlooking the city park. Mrs. Harrington, it's nice to see you. She shook my hand. Although I must admit I was surprised to get your call. You said you wanted to sell your house on Magnolia Street? That's right, I nodded, pulling a folder of papers out of my bag. All the necessary paperwork is in here. The title, the land deeds, the latest tax report. Dorothy scrutinized the documents, then looked up at me. Everything is in order. The house really does belong to you completely. But let me ask you this. I know your son and his family live there now. Are they aware of your plans? No. I shook my head. And I'd rather they found out in an official way. Dorothy nodded understandingly, not asking any more questions. Professional ethics. Good. Then let's discuss the process. First, we need to appraise the house, take pictures, prepare the listing. I want it done as quickly as possible, I interrupted her. And I'm willing to lower the price a little to sell it quickly. Speed can be arranged. Dorothy made a note in her notebook. But I wouldn't recommend lowering the price too much. Your neighborhood is very desirable, especially for a house of this size. How long have you lived there? Almost 40 years. My husband and I bought it when Weston was 5. 40 years. Dorothy frowned slightly. It might need some modernization before we sell it. Many buyers nowadays are looking for modern conveniences. I've been updating the house regularly, I objected. 5 years ago, the kitchen and bathrooms were completely remodeled. 2 years ago, they replaced the roof and installed a new air conditioning system. That's great, Dorothy made another note. In that case, I think we can put it up for a very good price. We talked about the details for about another hour. Dorothy showed me a comparative analysis of real estate prices in our neighborhood, and I was pleasantly surprised. The value of the house had increased several times over 40 years. If the sale goes through, I'll have enough money left over to buy a new home and save for the future. Tomorrow, I'll bring a photographer to take pictures of the house, Dorothy said at the end of our meeting, preferably when no one is home. That will be difficult, I sighed. Laura is almost always home. I understand, Dorothy nodded. Then perhaps we could use the pictures you already have. Do you have any recent pictures of the interior? I thought for a moment, then remembered. Yes. Last Christmas, Weston took a lot of pictures for the family album. They should be on my phone. We went through the pictures in my phone. Indeed, there were many pictures of the house decorated for the holiday. Dorothy chose the most appropriate ones, noting that holiday decor even creates extra coziness and can attract buyers. What about the exterior of the house? She asked. I can photograph it today when Weston is at work, and Laura is taking the kids to summer camp, I suggested. They usually leave around 3 in the afternoon. Great. Dorothy held out her hand to me. Then I'll expect exterior photos from you, and tomorrow we'll prepare an ad and put the house on the market. As I walked out of Dorothy's office, I felt strangely relieved. For the first time in a long time, I was acting on my own, making decisions that concerned only me. It was frightening and exhilarating at the same time. Back at Yvette's, I told her about the meeting with the realtor. Where do you plan to live after the sale? She asked, pouring us tea. I don't know yet, I admitted. Maybe I'll rent an apartment for the first time while I look for a suitable house. Don't be silly. Yvette waved her hand. You can stay with me as long as you need to. I even like having someone else in the house again. It's been too quiet since George died. I squeezed her hand gratefully. Thank you, but I don't want to abuse. Agatha Harrington, Yvette interrupted me in the stern tone she used to use to quiet noisy schoolchildren in the cafeteria. If you say abuse again, I will take offense, okay? Okay. I couldn't hold back a smile. In the afternoon, as planned, I drove to my house to take pictures for the ad. My heart raced as I approached the familiar street. What if Laura is still at home? What would I say? But I was in luck. The driveway was empty, meaning Laura had already left with the kids. I quickly snapped a few pictures of the house from different angles, trying to capture the manicured front yard with the hydrangea bushes that were in full bloom and the large oak tree Howard had planted the year we moved in. It was now a majestic tree, giving shade to half the yard. Finished with the pictures, I paused, looking at the house. So many memories had been associated with it. Weston's first steps, family holidays, quiet evenings with Howard on the porch. But now those memories were poisoned by the last few years of humiliation and yesterday's betrayal. It was time to move on. I sent the pictures to Dorothy and got a message from her that everything looked great, and tomorrow the house would appear in the agency's database and on all the major real estate sites. In the evening, Yvette and I sat in her backyard, sipping homemade lemonade and watching the sun go down. There was something peaceful about the moment, the quiet buzzing of the bees over the flower beds, the soft evening light. You know, Yvette said, breaking the cozy silence, I think it's for the best. What is? All of this? She put her hand around the space around her. That you left them, that you decided to sell the house. Sometimes we need a big push to start something new. I shook my head thoughtfully. I never thought I'd have to start from scratch at my age. Why not? Yvette shrugged. You and I are just over 60. It's not the end of life. Remember Mrs. Fletcher from across the street from the school? She was 75 when she decided to move to Florida and take up windsurfing. I laughed, remembering the eccentric old lady who always wore brightly colored tracksuits and dyed her hair purple. Yes, Mrs. Fletcher was special. We're all special, Yvette said seriously. We just forget it sometimes. You know, I've been meaning to tell you for a long time. You've changed a lot in the last few years, Agatha. It's like you've faded. You used to be so lively, so energetic. And then, first Howard's death, then Weston, and that Laura of his. It's like you've gotten smaller, quieter. I didn't say anything, but inside I knew she was right. It was as if I had shrunk, invisible in my own house, in my own life. But now, Yvette continued, I see glimpses of the old Agatha, the one who wasn't afraid to stand up for herself. Remember how you told off the headmaster when he wanted to cut the school lunch budget? You bet. I smiled at the memory. Poor Thompson didn't know what to do. Exactly! Yvette raised her finger triumphantly. That's the Agatha I want to see again. Not the frightened woman you became in your son's house. Her words hit something deep inside me. She was right. I had allowed myself to become a shadow, a ghost in the corner of the room, ignored by everyone, but not anymore. The next day, Dorothy called me with great news. The listing had caught the attention of several potential buyers, and 2 of them wanted to see the house as soon as possible. That's terrific, I said, feeling my heart beat faster. But what about Weston and Laura? They still live there and don't know about the sale. We're required by law to give all residents at least 24 hours notice of a showing, Dorothy explained. I can send the official notice today, and we can have the first showing tomorrow. They'll be furious, I muttered, imagining Laura's reaction. It's their problem, Dorothy said firmly. Legally, it's perfectly legal. The house belongs to you, and you have every right to sell it. After some hesitation, I agreed. Dorothy promised to send a formal notice to show the house today. Normally, we ask owners to attend showings, she said. But in your case, given the circumstances, it might be better if I did it myself. Yes, that would be better, I agreed with relief. A few hours later, the phone rang. Weston's name popped up on the screen of my phone. I took a deep breath, gathering my strength, and answered it. Yes, Weston? Mom, what the hell is going on? His voice sounded angry and confused at the same time. We just got a notice that some people are coming to inspect the house tomorrow. What are you doing? Selling the house, I replied calmly. It belongs to me, and I have every right to dispose of my property. There was shocked silence on the other end of the line. You can't do that, Weston finally said. We live here. I don't live here anymore, I said. You asked me to leave, remember? But Mom, his voice trembled. I didn't mean that. I thought you'd stay at Yvette's for a few days until things calmed down. I didn't expect you to sell the house. I finished for him. Well, life is full of surprises, isn't it? It's Laura, Weston said suddenly. She provoked you. I'll talk to her and you can go back. We'll work it out. I felt anger rising inside. No, Weston, I said firmly. This isn't about Laura. This is about you. You chose sides when you didn't say anything. When you let her kick me out of my own home, now live with the consequences. Mom, please, he said, a pleading tone in his voice. Let's meet and talk about this. I'm sure we can find a compromise. It's too late for compromise, I replied. The realtor will be at your place tomorrow afternoon at 2 o'clock with potential buyers. Try to make the house look presentable. I pressed the disconnect button, feeling a strange mixture of emotions. Regret that my relationship with my son was ruined, probably forever, and at the same time a sense of power and control over my own life that I hadn't felt in a long time. Yvette, who had heard my part of the conversation, silently handed me a glass of wine. To new beginnings, she said, raising her glass. To new beginnings, I echoed. And for the first time in a long time, I felt that the future might not be as bleak as it had seemed a few days ago. The next day, I purposely didn't walk by my house during the scheduled showing. Instead, Yvette and I went to the mall. She argued that I needed to update my closet to fit my new life. At her insistence, I bought a bright summer dress and comfortable sandals, items I hadn't risked wearing in recent years for fear of Laura's taunts that, at your age, Agatha, you should dress more modestly. When we got back, my phone had 5 missed calls from Weston and 2 from Dorothy. I decided to call the realtor first. Agatha! Dorothy's voice sounded excited. I have great news! Both clients are interested in the house, and one of them is ready to make an offer immediately. The Chung family, they recently moved from California and are looking for a spacious home in a good neighborhood. They have 2 teenage children, very nice people. That's great. I didn't expect it to happen so fast. How much are they offering? Dorothy said the price and I almost dropped the phone. It was even more than we had originally planned. They fell in love with the house at first sight, Dorothy continued. They especially like the large rooms and the oak garden. They're ready to put down a deposit today. And Weston and Laura? I asked, feeling a prick of unease. How did the show go with them? Dorothy paused a moment. Let's just say it was tense. Your daughter-in-law tried to disrupt the showing, claiming the house wasn't for sale. I explained the situation, showed her all the necessary documents, but she continued to behave unacceptably. Fortunately, your son intervened and took her upstairs, so I was able to show the house to the clients in peace. I sighed. That was exactly the reaction I had expected from Laura. I'm sorry about that, Dorothy. Don't apologize, she said firmly. It's part of my job. So what about the Chang family's offer? Do you accept it? I took a deep breath. This was the moment of truth, the point of no return. Yes, I said firmly. I accept their offer. Good. I'll contact their agent and start the paperwork. If everything goes smoothly, we should be able to close the deal within 3 weeks. After talking to Dorothy, I sat down on the couch, feeling a strange emptiness inside. It's done. I'm selling the house I've lived in most of my life. The house where my son grew up, where Howard and I dreamed of spending our old age. What's wrong? Yvette sat down next to me. Bad news? No, I shook my head. On the contrary, the house is for sale. The offer is even higher than we expected. But you don't look happy, Yvette remarked. It's all so final. I tried to explain my conflicting feelings. 40 years of life, and just like that, it's over. Yvette took my hand. It's not the end, Agatha. It's a beginning, your new journey. And you know what? I'm proud of you. Not everyone can find the strength to do what you're doing. Before I could answer, my phone rang. Weston. I have to take this, I sighed. Yvette nodded and tactfully left the room, leaving me alone with the phone. Yes, Weston? Mom, this madness has got to stop. He started right away, not even saying hello. Some people came by today, looking at everything, taking pictures. Laura almost had a nervous breakdown. They're potential buyers, I replied calmly. And one of them had already made an offer, which I accepted. There was a long pause. You're really doing this, Weston sounded confused. You're selling the house right out from under us to your own son. And you kicked your own mother out of her house, I parried. It's not very nice to be out on the street, is it? I didn't kick you out, he exclaimed. I just offered to stay with Yvette for a while until we all calmed down. No, Weston, I said firmly. You took Laura's side when she said the house was hers alone. You kept your mouth shut, and now you have to live with the consequences. Look, his tone changed, almost pleading. Let's get together and talk. Without Laura, just you and me, like we used to. I felt something tingle inside me. Despite everything, he was still my son, my only child. Okay, I agreed after a pause. Tomorrow at Martha's at 10 o'clock in the morning. Thanks, Mom. The relief in his voice was almost palpable. I'll be there. Martha's Cafe was a special place for Weston and me. When he was a teenager, I often took him there on Saturdays. We'd eat pancakes with blueberry syrup and talk about everything in the world. Those were happy times when there was no wall of separation between us. I arrived a little early and chose a table by the window, the same one we always sat at. Marta, the owner of the cafe, recognized me immediately. Agatha, I haven't seen you in ages. She hugged me tightly. How are you? How's Weston? I'm fine, I lied with a smile. Weston will be here in a minute. Then I'll make your favorite pancakes. Martha winked and headed for the kitchen. Weston showed up at 10 o'clock sharp. He looked tired, shadows under his eyes. When he saw me, he hesitated for a moment, as if he wasn't sure what to do, but then he came over and sat down across from me. Hello, Mother, he said quietly. Hello, Weston. I tried to keep my voice neutral. Martha immediately brought out pancakes and coffee, giving us a concerned look. Apparently, the tension between us was visible even from the outside. We were silent for a while, pretending to be absorbed in our food. Finally, Weston put down his fork and looked me straight in the eye. Mom, I want to apologize, he began. What happened? It was wrong. I should have taken your side. I remained silent, waiting for him to continue. Laura, she can be complicated, you know that, but she didn't mean for it to turn out this way. She just said something she shouldn't have said in the heat of emotion. And you let her say it, I said. And not only did you let her say it, but you supported me by asking me to leave. Weston lowered his eyes. I know, and I hate myself for it. But Mom, he looked at me again. Selling the house is too drastic. You're not thinking about the consequences. Where will we live? What will happen to the kids? They'll have to change schools, friends. Did you think about me when you kicked me out? I asked quietly. About where I would live? I never thought you'd leave for good, he exclaimed. I thought it would be like before you'd stay at Yvette's for a few days, then come back, and we'd forget all about this fight. Like before, I repeated slowly. That's the problem, Weston. I don't want it to be like it used to be. I don't want to live in a house where I feel invisible, where no one asks my opinion, where I'm tolerated out of mercy. But we can change all that. Weston pitched forward. I'll talk to Laura. She'll apologize. We'll set the rules. No, I shook my head. It's too late. The house is for sale. I accepted an offer yesterday. He's pale. You mustn't. I can and I must, I said firmly. It's my house and I have every right to use it. But we live there. We have children. There was a note of desperation in his voice. You can't just throw us out on the street. The new owners will give you a month to find a new place to live, I said. That's more than enough. You make good money, Weston. Laura works too. You can rent an apartment or a house. A place to rent. He almost spit those words out. After living in your own house, do you realize how humiliating that is? I do, I nodded. Believe me, I understand it very well. Weston stopped suddenly, realizing what he'd just said. It's, it's not the same, he mumbled. No? I raised an eyebrow. Why, because you're you and I'm just an old woman you can throw out on the street when she gets uncomfortable? I never thought so, he objected. But you acted that way, I pointed out, and now you have to face the consequences of your actions. Weston leaned back in his chair, his face contorted with anger and frustration. I don't recognize you, he said finally. My mother would never do this to her family. And I don't recognize you, I parried. My son would never kick his mother out of her own home. We stared at each other across the table like strangers. Martha, apparently sensing the tension, kept her distance, not offering a refill on her coffee as she usually did. Well, Weston finally said, rising, if you're determined to destroy our family, I can't stop you, but don't expect Laura and I to ever forgive you for it. I don't expect forgiveness, I replied calmly. I just want to live the rest of my days with dignity, without being humiliated, without feeling like a burden in my own home. Weston tossed a few bills on the table for his untouched breakfast and headed for the exit. At the door, he stopped and turned around. You're going to regret this, Mom, he said quietly, but with menace in his voice. When you're all alone, when you never see your grandchildren again. And he walked out, slamming the door. I sat staring at the unfinished pancakes and felt a strange numbness, like I was watching a movie about someone else's life instead of going through a breakup with my own son. Martha came over and sat silently beside me. Is it bad? She asked, putting her hand over mine. Very bad, I nodded. I'm selling the house. Weston's furious. That big house on Magnolia? Martha whistled. No wonder he's upset, but, that's your house, right? Yours and Howard's. Yes, I confirmed. It's all mine since Howard died. Then you have every right to do whatever you want with it, Martha said firmly. And don't let anyone, not even your own son, tell you otherwise. I squeezed her hand gratefully. Thank you, Martha. You're welcome, dear. She winked at me. Now, how about I wrap up these pancakes to take with me? They're too good to go to waste. I smiled and nodded, feeling a surge of gratitude toward this simple but wise woman who always knew how to find the right words. After my meeting with Weston, I decided it was time to start looking for a new place to live. The money from the sale of the house hadn't come in yet, but I had enough in savings to make a down payment if I found a good one. Dorothy was enthusiastic about helping me with my search. Over the next week, we looked at several houses and apartments in different neighborhoods in Sugar Land. Some were too big, others were in too busy neighborhoods. I wanted something cozy but not cramped, in a quiet place, but not too far from downtown. And so, on Thursday, Dorothy brought me to a small one-story house on Maple Street, in a neighborhood I knew but rarely visited. The house was clad in white siding with blue shutters and a porch wide enough to put a couple rocking chairs on. There was a small but well-maintained garden, and in the backyard, an old apple tree and a place to barbecue. What do you think? Dorothy asked when we got out of her car. Built in 1980, completely renovated 2 years ago. 2 bedrooms, 2 baths, living room, kitchen, dining room, small porch in the back. The neighborhood is quiet, mostly middle-aged couples and retirees living there. I silently looked at the house, feeling a strange excitement growing inside. It was 5 times smaller than my current house, but there was something about it, right. Can I see inside? I asked. Dorothy pulled out her keys with a smile. Sure. The owners had already moved out, so the house was empty. Inside the house was even better than I expected. Bright rooms with large windows, wooden floors that creaked pleasantly under my feet, a modern kitchen with a breakfast bar separating it from the dining room. The master bedroom was spacious, with its own bathroom and built-in closets. The second bedroom is smaller but with a large window overlooking the garden. This could be a guest room, I said, imagining what the house might look like when I furnished it with my things. Or a study. Or both, Dorothy suggested. We could put in a sofa bed for guests and use the rest of the space as a workspace. We went out onto the back porch. It was small, but there was room for a table and a couple of chairs. The view was of a neat patio with an apple tree and flower beds around the perimeter. It's perfect for morning coffee, Dorothy said, or for afternoon tea and a book. I nodded, already imagining myself here in a wicker chair with a cup of tea, watching the sun go down. No one would make comments about me taking up too much space or turning the pages too loudly. How many? I asked, already knowing I wanted the house. Dorothy named a price, and I did a quick calculation in my mind. With the money from the sale of my big house, I could buy this house outright, mortgage-free, and still have a decent amount of money left over for improvements and the future. I'll take it, I said firmly. Dorothy brightened up. Great! I'll contact the seller's agent today. Since the house is already empty and you're willing to pay full price right away, we can close the deal very quickly. How quickly? I asked, suddenly feeling impatient. I wanted to move into my new home as soon as possible, to start my new life. If everything goes smoothly, you'll be able to move in 2 weeks, Dorothy said. Maybe even sooner. 2 weeks. It seemed both too long and too short for such a major life change. When we got back to Yvette's house, I told her about the new house, showed her the pictures I'd taken with my phone. It's perfect for you, Yvette approved. It's big enough, but not too big. And that garden, you'll be able to grow your roses like you've always wanted to. Yes, I smiled, remembering how Laura had cut down my rose bushes, saying they were old-fashioned and took up too much space. That same evening, Dorothy called with the news. The owners of the new house had accepted my offer and we could begin the paperwork. At the same time, the sale of my old house was also moving forward. The Chung family had already signed all the necessary papers, and we were just waiting for the final closing. The next 2 weeks passed like a blur. I signed documents, went to the bank, met with lawyers. At the same time, I started buying things for the new house. Not furniture, which I decided to buy later, but little things that make the house cozy. New curtains, kitchen towels, a set of dishes, linens. I hadn't heard from Weston since the day we met at the cafe. I knew he and Laura still lived in the house but were preparing to move. Dorothy said she'd seen a truck from the box delivery service when she came with the inspector. Finally, the day came when both transactions closed, almost simultaneously. I signed the final papers to sell the old house in the morning and in the afternoon to buy the new house. The money was transferred, the keys handed over. My big house on Magnolia Street now belonged to the Chung family, and the little house on Maple Street became mine. Dorothy handed me the keys to my new house with a triumphant smile. Congratulations, Agatha. You are now officially the owner of this beautiful home. I took the keys, feeling their pleasant heaviness in the palm of my hand. A new home, a new life. That same evening, as Yvette and I celebrated my housewarming with a glass of wine, though I hadn't moved in yet, the furniture hadn't been delivered yet, I received a phone call from a strange woman. Mrs. Harrington? A pleasant voice asked. This is Eliza Chang. We bought your house on Magnolia Street. Ah, Mrs. Chang. I was surprised by her call. What can I do for you? I just wanted to let you know that we sent a formal notice to your son and his family to vacate the house within 30 days as agreed. But I thought you should know too. They didn't take it very well. What do you mean? I asked, feeling my heart clench. Your daughter-in-law was very aggressive, Mrs. Chung said carefully. She yelled at my husband that we had no right to kick them out, that the house should have gone to them. Your son eventually took her away, but it was unpleasant. I'm sorry, I said sincerely. They knew about the sale, and the timing too. Don't apologize, it's not your fault, Mrs. Chung said quickly. I just thought you should know. After Mrs. Chung spoke to me, I sat staring off into space for a long time. So Weston and Laura were still hoping they could stay in the house. Perhaps they didn't believe I would actually follow through. Or maybe they thought the new owners would let them live there as tenants. Either way, reality had caught up with them, and judging by Laura's reaction, they weren't ready for it. 3 days after that call, I moved into my new home. By then, the basic furniture had already been delivered: bed, couch, dining table, and cabinets. I planned to add the rest gradually, choosing each item with love and attention. The first night in the new house was strange. Unfamiliar sounds, smells, sensations. But when I woke up in the morning and stepped out onto the back porch with a cup of coffee to greet the dawn, I felt a surprising calm. There were no heavy memories here, no ghosts of the past, just me, my coffee, and the rising sun. It's amazing how quickly time flies when you're busy settling into your own life. 3 months in the new house flew by. September was followed by October, then November. Sugarland was in the midst of a mild Texas fall, still warm during the day, but cooler in the mornings. The leaves on the trees were slowly changing color, painting my little garden in shades of gold and bronze. Every morning I woke up with a sense of quiet joy. No one commented on what time I got up, what I wore, or what I was going to do today. I could eat breakfast on the veranda while reading a book or watch old movies until midnight without fear that someone would roll their eyes and say, "Those old melodramas are so boring, Agatha." Of course, there were lonely evenings when I sat in the quiet of my new home and thought about how my life had turned out. Thinking about Weston, about the grandchildren I hadn't seen in months. But I didn't allow myself to wallow in self-pity. Instead, I decided to build a new life, a life in which I was the protagonist, not an inconvenient secondary character. The first step was getting to know my neighbors. To my right lived a couple about my age, Oliver and Janet Kramer, retirees who had moved from Chicago 5 years ago. Oliver was a former engineer and Janet was a music teacher. They immediately invited me over for a barbecue, introduced me to the other neighbors, and I soon formed a small circle of new acquaintances. On the left lived Rosemary Paul, a widow in her 50s, with two grown children who already lived separately. Rosemary worked as a florist and ran a small flower store downtown. After hearing about my love of gardening, she suggested I join a local gardening group that met once a week at the community center. "We're just short of new members," Rosemary said as we sipped tea on my veranda. And believe me, Agatha, there is no better way to make friends at our age. So I became a member of the Sugarland Green Thumbs, a group of gardening enthusiasts who exchanged advice, seeds, and cuttings, and once a month organized excursions to botanical gardens or nurseries. There were about 15 people in the group, mostly women my age or a little younger. But there were a few men, and even a couple of young moms who wanted to learn how to grow their own vegetables. The group was led by an energetic 70-year-old Eleanor Dixon, a former botany professor who knew absolutely everything about plants. Under her guidance, I began to transform my small backyard into a paradise. The roses I had always wanted to grow now took pride of place along the south wall. Eleanor helped me choose varieties that did well in the Texas climate and taught me how to care for them. Gardening turned out to be not only an enjoyable hobby, but also a kind of therapy. When I was digging, pruning branches, or watering plants, thoughts of Weston and his family receded into the background. I was in the here and now, alone with nature, creating something beautiful with my hands. One Tuesday, after a regular meeting of the gardening group, Eleanor stopped me. "Agatha, have you ever thought about teaching?" she asked without preamble. "Teaching?" I blinked in surprise. "No, never. I've worked as a school cook, but that's different." "You have a talent for explaining complicated things in simple terms," Eleanor said. "I noticed how you helped Brenda with her problem hydrangeas. It was very clear to the point, and most importantly, she got it right the first time. That's a rare gift." I shook my head in embarrassment. "I don't think any conclusions can be drawn from this." "Yes," Eleanor said firmly. "Listen, our community center is looking for a teacher for beginning gardeners, just once a week, 2 hours. Small group, mostly young moms and retirees. Nothing complicated. Basic houseplant care, garden planning, seasonal work. And the pay is good." "Yeah, I don't know." I was confused. "I don't have any education in this field, only personal experience." "That's exactly what they need," Eleanor patted my arm. "Not a botany professor, but a person who can tell you how to grow tomatoes on the balcony or save a dying orchid. Think about it, okay?" I promised to think about it, even though the idea seemed a little scary to me. Teaching? At my age? But the thought wouldn't let me go, and a few days later I called the number Eleanor had given me. To my surprise, the director of the community center, Mr. Patterson, was very interested in my candidacy. We met, discussed the format of the classes, and by the end of November I was teaching my first course, Gardening for Beginners. There were 12 people in the class, and to my great relief, the first class went better than I expected. The students asked lots of questions, listened attentively, and no one fell asleep out of boredom, which I thought was a good sign. Besides gardening, I decided to revive another hobby that had been forbidden in Weston and Laura's house for many years: tea ceremonies. As a young girl, I became fascinated with Japanese tea culture, even taking special courses in Houston. I had a beautiful tea set and all the necessary accessories, which were miraculously preserved in boxes in the basement of the old house and which I took away when I moved. When Weston and Laura first came to live with me, I tried to organize tea ceremonies for my grandchildren. I taught them how to brew different kinds of tea and told them about the traditions. At first, the kids loved it, especially with cookies and cakes, but Laura quickly put an end to this old-fashioned nonsense. "Kids, you need to do your homework, not waste your time with this Chinese stuff," she would say. Even though I had explained many times that the tea ceremony was a Japanese tradition, not a Chinese one. Now in my own home, I was free to revive the hobby. I set aside a corner in the living room specifically for tea ceremony, bought new cups and teapots, and began collecting rare teas. In the evenings, I enjoyed a quiet ritual that brought a sense of order and calm to my life. One day, I invited Janet and Rosemary to a tea party. They were so impressed with my skill and knowledge of tea that they began to bring other friends. I soon formed an informal tea club that met every other week. "Agatha, you should do this professionally," Rosemary once said after a particularly successful ceremony with jasmine tea and homemade almond cookies. "Seriously, I'd pay for that kind of experience." "Don't be silly," I brushed it off. "Who needs tea ceremonies in Sugarland?" "Lots of people," Janet interjected. "You know, it's really popular now for birthday parties, bachelorette parties, get-togethers. Everyone's looking for something special, something different." I just shook my head, not taking their words seriously. But fate seemed to have other plans. In early December, when I went into Marta's cafe for a cup of coffee, the owner herself called out to me. "Agatha, I was just thinking about you." Marta waved at me from behind the counter. "I have a business proposition for you." I raised my eyebrows in surprise, but sat down at the counter. Martha poured me a cup of coffee and held out a plate of blueberry muffins, my favorite. "I hear you do amazing tea ceremonies," she began without preamble. "From who?" I wondered. "Rosemary. She's a regular customer of mine," Martha explained. "And here's what I was thinking. My cafe is almost empty at night. Everyone comes in for breakfast and lunch, and after 5 o'clock it's quiet. How about you host a tea party at my place once or twice a week? You get a percentage of the proceeds. I get customers at dead time. Everyone's happy." I nearly choked on my muffin. "Martha, I'm not a professional. I wasn't a professional when I opened this cafe 20 years ago either," she grinned. "I just like to cook for my friends. Sometimes a hobby can become something more if you have talent. And you do, according to Rosemary, and I believe her." "I don't know." I still had my doubts. "It's a big responsibility." "Let's give it a try," Martha suggested. "We'll have a trial run, invite your friends and my regulars. If it goes well, we'll continue. If not, we'll part ways." I agreed, not realizing what was in store for me. The next 2 weeks passed in preparation for the first official tea party in the cafe, Martha's. I prepared the menu, chose the tea varieties, and thought about the table decorations. Martha, for her part, took care of the advertising, hanging ads in the cafe and posting information in the local newspaper and on the cafe's social media page. To my surprise, 15 people signed up for the first night, full seating for a small cafe. This included my friends from the gardening club, Martha's customers, and even a few complete strangers who saw the ad. The evening went even better than I could have hoped. I talked about the history of tea ceremonies, the different types of tea, and the proper brewing methods. I showed how to use special devices, how to hold the cup correctly, how to evaluate the flavor. The guests were delighted, especially when the tea was served with dainty little cakes that Martha had baked especially for the event. It was amazing, an elderly lady I was seeing for the first time told me. Such an immersion into the culture. I felt like I was in Kyoto, even though I'd never been there. "When is the next night?" another guest asked. "I want to bring my daughter. She would love it." By the end of the evening, we had a wish list for the next ceremony, and Martha suggested that we make them a regular occurrence every Thursday. I agreed, still in disbelief that my humble hobby had generated such interest. "See?" Martha said as we cleaned up after the evening. "I told you. You have a talent not only for tea, but for connecting with people. You make them feel special. I only shook my head, embarrassed, but somewhere deep inside a warm sense of pride blossomed. After so many years of having my hobbies ridiculed, it was nice to have someone appreciate what I could do. In mid-December, as I was returning home from a gardening class, I was in for an unexpected surprise. Sitting on my front porch was a tall, skinny teenager wearing a dark jacket and carrying a backpack over his shoulders. My heart skipped a beat when I recognized him. "Morton?" I called out uncertainly, not believing my eyes. My grandson looked up and smiled weakly. "Hi, Grandma." I hurried over to him, not knowing if I should hug him or not. We hadn't seen each other in almost 4 months, not since I'd left Weston's house. "What are you doing here?" I asked, stopping in front of him. "Do your parents know you're here?" Morton shook his head. "N. They think I'm at basketball practice." "Oh, Morton," I sighed. "You shouldn't lie to your parents." What was I supposed to do? I could hear the annoyance in his voice. "My father forbade us to even mention your name at home. When I asked him if I could visit you, he made such a fuss." I sighed heavily and sat down beside him on the steps. "Is it that bad?" "It's worse," Morton grimaced. "They've moved into an apartment much smaller than your old house. Mom's always complaining that she has no place to put all her stuff. Dad's been irritable, working late all the time. And Pearl." He stopped talking. "What's wrong with Pearl?" I was worried. "She's fine," Morton said quickly. "She just misses you. We both do." I felt a lump come up in my throat. My grandchildren. The hardest part of breaking up with Weston was losing the chance to see them, to watch them grow up. "I miss you too," I said quietly, daring to put my hand on my grandson's shoulder. To my relief, he didn't pull away. "Grandma," he said in a serious tone, "I don't blame you for what you did. I understand. Mother behaved terribly, and Father—" He shook his head. "He should have taken your side." I was silent, not knowing what to say. Morton was still a child, despite his 16 years and almost adult height. He shouldn't have been dragged into a conflict between adults. "Morton," I finally said, "your parents, they love you. Even if they make mistakes, even if they're unfair to me, it shouldn't affect your relationship with them. But what they did to you, that's between me and them," I said firmly. "Don't drag yourself into this." Morton shook his head stubbornly. "I'm already involved. We all are. And I want to see you, no matter what your parents say." I sighed. On the one hand, I was madly anxious to see my grandchildren. On the other, I was afraid I'd further complicate my already strained relationship with Weston. "Let's do it this way," I suggested after some thought. "You'll come to my place, but only if you tell your parents where you're going. I don't want you to lie for me." "They won't allow it," Morton said grimly. "Then we'll find another way," I said. "Maybe I can talk to your father." "No," Morton jumped up. "Don't. It would only make things worse." I looked at my grandson carefully. He was really afraid of Weston's reaction. What had been going on in their house all these months? "Okay," I said slowly. "Let's do this for now. You'll come to my house after school or practice, but you'll be sure to let your parents know where you are. You don't have to tell them you're at my place. Just say you're at a friend's house or at the library. It's not perfect, but at least it's not a direct lie." Morton relaxed a little. "It's a deal. Now let's go inside." I rose from the steps. "You haven't seen how I've settled in yet, and I'm sure you're hungry." Morton smiled for the first time in the whole conversation, really wide and sincere. "I'm starving. Do you have anything to eat?" "Always for you." I put my arm around his shoulders, and we went into the house together. That night, I made Morton his favorite dishes: fried chicken with mashed potatoes and apple pie for dessert. We sat in the kitchen, and he told me about school, about basketball, about his new friends. I listened, savoring every moment, trying to remember every detail. The way he gestured when he talked about the winning shot at the last game. The way he wrinkled his nose when he talked about the difficult math teacher. The way his eyes lit up when he talked about a girl named Zoe from the parallel class. It was a lovely evening. The first time in a long time that I felt truly like a grandmother and not just a lonely old woman. When it was time for Morton to leave, I gave him a container of leftover cake for Pearl and promised to bake some more the next time he came over. "Are you coming?" I asked at the door, trying not to show my anxiety. I will, Morton nodded. I have a short day of school next Tuesday. I'll be there right after lunch. I glanced at him as he walked down the street toward the bus stop, and I felt a warmth in my heart. Maybe all was not lost. Maybe my grandchildren would still be a part of my life after all, despite the conflict with their parents. I couldn't sleep for a long time that night, thinking about Morton, about Pearl, about Weston. Despite everything that had happened, they were my family. And somewhere deep inside, I hoped that someday we could find our way back to each other. Not now, not soon, but someday. In the meantime, I had my new life. A home I loved, new friends who appreciated me, a job that brought not only money but fulfillment, and maybe secret visits from a grandson who risked his father's wrath to see his grandmother. It wasn't a perfect life, but it was my life. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I could look forward to the future with hope. Morton kept his promise. Every Tuesday after school, he came over to my house, and we spent a few hours together cooking something delicious, playing board games, sometimes just talking. I would help him with his history and literature homework, and he would show me how to use the new apps on my phone. These visits became bright spots in my week, moments I looked forward to. On one of those Tuesdays, about a month after Morton's first visit, there was an unexpected knock on the door. It was January, cold even for Texas, and I had just pulled out of the oven the cinnamon cookies my grandson was particularly fond of. Morton was sitting at the kitchen table doing his algebra homework. "Are you expecting someone?" he asked, lifting his head from his textbook. "No," I frowned, wiping my hands on my apron. "Maybe the neighbor came by to borrow some sugar." I opened the door and froze. There stood Pearl, my 12-year-old granddaughter, wrapped in an oversized down jacket with a backpack behind her and a determined expression on her face. "Pearl," I couldn't believe my eyes. "Hi, Grandma," she smiled weakly. "Can I come in? It's cold." I quickly stepped aside, letting her into the house. Morton jumped out of the kitchen when he heard his sister's voice. "Pearl? What are you doing here?" He sounded surprised and worried at the same time. "Same thing you are." She threw off the down jacket that I could now see belonged to Morton. "Visiting my grandmother." "But how did you—" Morton began. "I'm not an idiot," Pearl interrupted him with the directness that had always been her characteristic. "Every Tuesday you disappear after school and come back with that satisfied look on your face. And you smell like Grandma's cookies." I put two and two together. I couldn't hold back a smile. My Pearl was always a smart girl. "I followed you," she continued, turning to her brother. "I skipped my last class today and took the bus to pick you up." "You skipped school?" I frowned. "Pearl, it was just gym class," she shrugged. And I had to find out where Morton was disappearing to. The three of us spent a lovely afternoon together. Pearl talked about her new school. She and Morton had had to change schools after they moved, about the drama club she'd joined, about preparing for the spring concert. "I'm going to play the flute," she said proudly. "I have a solo in one part." "That's wonderful." I was genuinely excited. "You've always played so well." "Mom says it's a waste of time," Pearl grimaced. "She wants me to play tennis like she did in high school, but I hate tennis." I exchanged glances with Morton. He shook his head slightly, and I realized it was best not to broach the subject of Laura. "Will the concert be open?" I asked instead. "Can parents come?" "Yes," Pearl nodded. "February 25th in the school auditorium." Suddenly her face brightened. "Grandma, are you coming?" I froze. On the one hand, I desperately wanted to see my granddaughter perform. On the other hand, Weston and Laura would probably be there. "Pearl, I'm not sure if your parents—" "What difference does it make?" She interrupted me. "It's a social event. They can't stop you from coming, and I really want you to be there." I looked into her pleading eyes and realized I couldn't say no. "Okay," I nodded. "I'll be there." Pearl clapped her hands together happily, and Morton gave me a worried look. He knew better than I did what a scandal it would be if Weston and Laura saw me at the concert. After that day, Pearl began to come with Morton every Tuesday. Sometimes she came on other days, always making up some excuse for her parents, a class with a friend, extra rehearsals, a trip to the library. I felt guilty about these lies, but I couldn't deny my grandchildren to see me. From them, I learned what was going on in the Weston household. They were really tight on money. Rent was eating up most of their budget, and Laura had to take a full-time job with an insurance company, even though she had only worked 3 days a week before. Weston often stayed late at work, and when he came home, he was irritable and sullen. Pearl said her parents often fought, blaming each other for what happened and sometimes taking their anger out on their children. "Mommy says mean things about you all the time," Pearl said one day as she helped me bake a pie. "That you're selfish, that you betrayed the family, that you never really loved us." I kneaded the dough in silence, trying not to show how much it hurt me to hear that. "Morton and I know that's not true," Pearl added hastily, noticing my face. "We remember how you've always been, taking care of us, playing with us, helping us with our lessons when Mom was too busy." The day before the concert, Morton came to see me alone without Pearl. "Grandmother, I need to warn you," he said gravely as soon as we sat down to tea. "A mother has found out that Pearl and I are visiting you." I went cold. "How?" "She found the pictures we took here last week on Pearl's phone," Morton said grimly. "She made quite a scene, screamed that you were turning us against them, that we were traitors." He shook his head. "It was awful." "Oh, Morton," I reached out and squeezed his palm. "I'm so sorry. I didn't want you to get in trouble because of me." "It's not your fault," he said firmly. "Mom's just, she changed after all this. She's become obsessive, always talking about you, about the house, about how everything would be fine if you hadn't sold it." "And Dad?" I asked him quietly. "What did he say?" "At first he yelled too." Morton grimaced. "But then he said he couldn't forbid us, that we were old enough to decide for ourselves. But he told us to be careful not to upset Mom." On the morning of the concert, I received several messages from friends wishing me luck. Yvette, Rosemary, Janet, Eleanor, Martha, they all knew about the upcoming battle, as Yvette jokingly called it. "I can sit next to you and make scary eyes at your daughter-in-law if she starts to scandalize," Yvette laughed when she called me. I refused to be chaperoned, deciding I had to meet Weston and Laura alone. But the support of my friends gave me strength. That evening, I put on my new dress, neatly styled my hair, and applied light makeup. I arrived at the school early enough to get a seat away from the rows where the parents of the children who were performing usually sat. The assembly hall was gradually filling up. Parents, grandparents, brothers, and sisters of young musicians. I sat quietly, trying not to attract attention, though I knew that sooner or later Weston and Laura would notice me. It was about 10 minutes before the concert began. I heard Laura's familiar harsh voice somewhere behind me, and I turned around involuntarily. They were standing in the aisle, Weston in a strict suit, Laura in a tight red dress that I thought was too bright for a school event. She was saying something to a man sitting on the edge of the row, apparently trying to see if the seats next to him were taken. At that moment, Laura looked up and met my gaze. Her face changed instantly. Her eyes narrowed, her lips pressed into a thin line. She nudged Weston with her elbow and nodded in my direction. He turned, and I saw the surprise on his face change to anger, and then some strange mixture of emotions I couldn't decipher. Laura whispered something fiercely in his ear, but Weston shook his head and pointed to the empty seats in the third row, almost at the very edge of the stage and quite far away from me. After a second's hesitation, Laura reluctantly followed him, casting another sizzling glance in my direction. The concert was beautiful. The school orchestra played several classical pieces adapted for children's performance. There were solo pieces as well as small ensembles. Pearl performed in the middle of the program. She played a flute solo in Grieg's Morning. I watched her with pride and love. My little granddaughter, so serious and focused, extracting delicate, pure sounds from the instrument. After the concert, there was a small buffet for parents and students in the school cafeteria. I hesitated whether I should go, but decided I couldn't leave without congratulating Pearl on a great performance. The cafeteria was full of people. Parents were gathered in small groups discussing the performances. Children scurried between the snack tables. I stood against the wall watching the crowd and trying to find Pearl. "Grandma," I heard suddenly, and I turned around. Pearl was pushing her way through the crowd, followed by Morton. "You came!" "Of course I came," I smiled. "I promised." You played great, honey. I'm so proud of you. Pearl brightened up and threw her arms around me. I held her tightly against me, feeling her heart pounding with excitement and joy. Do you really think it was good? She asked, pulling away. I was so afraid of making a mistake in the third part. It was perfect, I assured her. You're a real artist. Morton stood beside me, smiling, but his eyes surveyed the room restlessly. Where are your parents? I asked quietly. Talking to the music teacher, Morton answered. But they'll soon notice we're gone. As if on cue, I heard a familiar voice behind me. Pearl, Morton, what are you doing here? I turned around slowly. Laura was standing a few feet away, her face contorted with rage when she saw me. Behind her loomed Weston, looking both embarrassed and annoyed. We're talking to Grandma, Pearl said calmly, not moving away from me. She came to my concert. I can tell, Laura hissed. How thoughtful of her, especially since no one invited her. I did, Pearl said firmly. It's my concert, and I wanted Grandmother to be here. Laura took a step forward, her eyes sparkling. You had no right. You're just a child. You don't understand. Laura, Weston put a hand on her shoulder. Not here. There are people around. She shook off his hand, but lowered her voice a little. What are you doing here, Agatha? She asked with barely restrained anger. Have you come to see how we live after you threw us out on the street? I came to support my granddaughter at her performance, I said calmly. And like Weston said, this is not the place to get into a fight. Oh, now you care about decorum? Laura grinned. You didn't care much when you sold the house under us, did you? Mother, stop it, Morton interjected. Grandmother has a right to be here. Don't tell me what to do, Laura turned to her son. And don't you dare defend her after everything she's done to our family. You're the one who destroyed our family, Pearl suddenly blurted out, her voice shaking with emotion. You hurt Grandma, kicked her out of her own house, and now you're angry that she wouldn't let you just take everything. A small zone of silence formed around us. People were beginning to notice the conflict and listen. An elegant middle-aged woman approached us, apparently one of the teachers. Is everything all right? She asked with a professional smile, though her eyes were carefully assessing the situation. Mrs. Lang, your daughter played just beautifully today. You must be very proud of her. That simple comment seemed to bring Laura back to reality. She blinked, looked around, and apparently realized she was attracting too much attention. Yes, thank you, she said with a strained smile. Pearl, the children. Now, I want to stay with Grandmother, Pearl said stubbornly. Laura grabbed her arm, and I saw Pearl wince in pain. We're leaving. Now Weston watched the scene with a stone face. He met my gaze, and I saw the cold hostility in his eyes. However compromising he might have seemed to Morton in private, in public he was in full support of Laura. Come, Morton, he said, putting his hand on his son's shoulder. We have nothing more to do here. Morton looked at me regretfully. I'm sorry, Grandmother, he whispered. I'll call you. Don't you dare, Laura hissed. No calls, no meetings. Do you understand? Morton lowered his head, but I could see the stubborn glint in his eyes. I knew that look, the same look Weston had when he was his age, when he decided something against Howard and me. Weston literally dragged the kids out of the cafeteria. Laura paused for a moment, looking at me with undisguised hatred. You think you've won, she said quietly, but with such fury that I felt a chill run down my spine. But you didn't. You've lost your son forever. And sooner or later you'll lose your grandchildren. They will realize what you really are. What am I like, Laura? I asked you calmly. A selfish, vindictive old woman who would destroy her own family's life for her own whims, she spat out. I shook my head. No, Laura. I'm just a woman who has finally learned to value herself. And that scares you more than anything, doesn't it? Her face contorted with anger, and for a moment I thought she was ready to hit me. But instead she turned and walked quickly toward the exit, where Weston and the kids were waiting for her. I was left standing alone, feeling the curious stares of those around me. It hurt. It hurt to see how Weston had betrayed me again, how Laura had manipulated the children, using them as weapons against me. But deep inside, I knew I had done the right thing, protecting my dignity and my independence. Agatha? I heard a familiar voice and turned around. It was Marta from Marta's Cafe, whose granddaughter was also in the concert. Are you okay? I saw what happened. Yeah, I smiled weakly. It's just family stuff. Come on, she took me under her arm. There are a few people here I want you to meet. They were at your last tea ceremony and they loved it. Martha led me over to a group of elegant women who greeted me with warm smiles. They began to ask about Japanese tea traditions, about rare teas, about the rules of serving. Gradually, the pain of the run-in with Weston and Laura began to recede. As the evening drew to a close, I noticed one of the teachers, the same one who had interrupted our conflict, heading toward me. Mrs. Harrington? She extended her hand to me. I'm Ms. Oliver, Pearl's music teacher. She's told me a lot about you. She has? I raised my eyebrows in surprise. Oh yes, Ms. Oliver smiled. She says you taught her to love music, that you always supported her passion for the flute, even when her parents were against it. I felt tears come to my eyes, and I blinked quickly to hold them back. She's very talented, I said. She has a real gift. I agree, Ms. Oliver nodded. And I'm glad she has someone who understands and appreciates it. She paused, then added, You know we have a rule at school that we don't get involved in family conflicts. But if you want to keep in touch with your grandchildren, I can pass notes through Pearl sometimes. Nothing official, just to let them know you're thinking of them. I was touched by that suggestion. Thank you, I said sincerely. It means a lot to me. As I walked to my car after the concert, I felt a strange mixture of emotions, sad that Weston had finally chosen Laura's side, hurt at being separated from my grandchildren, but also proud that I hadn't given up, hadn't let myself be intimidated, hadn't given up my right to be happy. In the parking lot, I spotted them, Weston, Laura, and the kids getting into the car. Pearl looked back and seeing me waved quickly before Laura could see. Morton noticed me too and nodded discreetly, our secret sign meaning I'll find a way to get in touch. I got into my car and just sat for a while gathering my thoughts. A year ago, I was a lonely, intimidated woman living in my own home as an unwanted guest. Today, I am independent. I have my own home, a job I enjoy, new friends who appreciate me. Yes, I lost my son, perhaps forever. But I gained something equally important, self-respect and the freedom to be myself. I started the car and drove home, to my cozy little house on Maple Street, where no one will humiliate me, where I can live by my own rules, where every corner is filled only with my memories and dreams. I don't know what the future will bring, whether Weston and I will ever be able to mend our relationship, whether my grandchildren will continue to visit me in secret, whether Laura will ever forgive me for ruining her plans for my home. But I know one thing, I will never again let anyone take away my right to dignity and happiness, and that is worth all the loss.